The sound of my Louboutin heels echoed through the marble floors of our Hamptons mansion as I, Catherine Harrison, meticulously set the dining table for three. At 42, I was at the peak of my career as the chief marketing officer for a Fortune 500 company, known for my strategic mind and unflappable demeanor in the boardroom. Tonight, those same skills would serve a far more personal purpose. 15 years ago, I had walked down the aisle to marry James, the brilliant young medical student I'd met during our final year at Yale. Back then, I was Catherine Chen, the ambitious daughter of Chinese immigrants who had fought her way to the Ivy League. James and I bonded over late-night study sessions and dreams of changing the world. We agreed early on not to have children. My career was taking off, and James was dedicated to becoming a top cardiac surgeon. Our life together had been a carefully choreographed dance of success, social engagements, and maintaining the image of the perfect power couple. As I adjusted the blood-red roses in the centerpiece, I couldn't help but reflect on how that image had shattered 6 months ago. The irony wasn't lost on me as I smoothed down my black Chanel dress, a gift from James on our 10th anniversary. For years, I had been the consummate hostess, the supportive wife, balancing my own high-powered career with the demands of being Mrs. Dr. Harrison. I had prided myself on my ability to read people, to anticipate needs and solve problems before they arose. Yet somehow I had missed the signs of my own husband's betrayal. The moment of discovery came rushing back to me. A rainy Tuesday afternoon when I accidentally found their text messages while using James's iPad to order his birthday gift. The messages weren't just sexual, they were intimate, filled with promises of a future together. My hands trembled as I read about their secret weekends in Vermont, their plans for after he left me, and most painfully their jokes about how oblivious I was to it all. But instead of confronting him immediately, something inside me shifted. The raw pain crystallized into something darker, more purposeful. I spent months gathering evidence, hiring private investigators, and documenting every aspect of their affair. I learned their patterns, their meeting spots, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Sarah, barely 32, was ambitious and impatient, constantly pushing James to leave me. She wanted the lifestyle I had built with him, the status of being Mrs. Harrison, and the keys to this very house where I now stood, preparing for their arrival. The doorbell chimed precisely at 7, and I felt my heart race with anticipation. Through the security camera feed on my phone, I watched Sarah walk up our limestone steps. Her red dress a bit too tight for a dinner with her lover's wife, her expression a mixture of nervousness and poorly concealed triumph. James's car would be pulling up any minute. He had texted earlier saying he'd come straight from the hospital. Little did they know that tonight's dinner would be served with a side of carefully planned destruction. I smoothed down my dress one last time, feeling the weight of the USB drive in my pocket. It contained every piece of evidence I had collected, every secret I had uncovered, not just about their affair, but about certain medical irregularities at the hospital that James had been desperately trying to cover up. Tonight wasn't just about exposing an affair. It was about dismantling their entire world with the same methodical precision my husband used in his surgeries and I used in my marketing campaigns. Taking a deep breath, I savored these last moments before the show began. Years of presenting to Fortune 500 boardrooms had prepared me for high-stakes performances, but tonight would be my masterpiece. With one last glance in the mirror, I saw not just Catherine Harrison, the betrayed wife, but a woman prepared to reclaim her life with ruthless efficiency. Opening the door, I greeted Sarah with a warmth that made her visibly uncomfortable. Her eyes darted around nervously, taking in the elegant foyer where photos of James and me still lined the walls. 15 years of memories she thought she could simply replace. "Sarah, darling, I'm so glad you could make it," I said, noting how she flinched slightly when I touched her arm to guide her inside. The scent of her perfume, the same one I had found traces of on James's shirts, filled the air between us. The sound of James's BMW pulling into the driveway made Sarah's posture stiffen. I could almost hear her heart racing, could practically see the thoughts running through her mind. Was this a trap? Had I discovered their secret? But she had no idea just how deep my knowledge ran. As James walked in, his confident surgeon's stride faltered for just a moment when he saw us standing together. The color drained from his face before he quickly composed himself, years of performing high-stress surgeries helping him maintain his facade. "Honey, you didn't tell me Sarah would be joining us," he said, trying to keep his voice casual while his eyes screamed panic. I watched them during cocktail hour, noting every subtle glance they exchanged, every careful movement to maintain appropriate distance. I served them both my special Manhattan cocktails, a recipe I'd perfected over the years as the consummate hostess. A toast, I proposed, raising my glass, to new beginnings. The irony in my words made my smile widen as they nervously sipped their drinks. James loosened his tie slightly. He always did that when he was anxious. Sarah's hand trembled as she held her glass, her red fingernails clicking against the crystal. The conversation flowed with artificial ease as I asked Sarah about her work at the hospital, watching her squirm as she tried to maintain professional distance while discussing my husband. "James has been an incredible mentor," she said, her eyes fixed on her plate. "He's taught me so much." I couldn't help but wonder if she included afternoon trysts in on-call rooms and secret weekend getaways in that education. As I served the main course, James's favorite beef Wellington, I thought about the evidence waiting in my study upstairs. Bank statements showing the apartment he had secretly leased for their meetings, hotel receipts, surveillance photos, and most damaging of all, proof of his medical indiscretions that would destroy not just his marriage, but his entire career. The tension in the room grew thicker with each passing minute. I could see James growing increasingly uneasy with my unusual calm, my pointed questions about their work relationship. Sarah kept touching her neck nervously, a tell I had observed during my months of surveillance. They both knew something was wrong, but neither could figure out exactly what game I was playing. The power of knowing what they didn't know was intoxicating. Every bite they took, every sip of wine, brought us closer to the moment when I would reveal just how completely I had outmaneuvered them both. "More wine?" I offered, reaching for the bottle just as James's phone buzzed loudly against the mahogany table. I noticed Sarah's hand twitch toward her own phone, their usual method of secret communication now useless in plain sight. The moment had arrived. "Actually," I said, setting the wine bottle down with deliberate slowness, "before we continue, I have a special presentation prepared." The word presentation made James's fork clatter against his plate. He knew how thorough my corporate presentations had always been. I pulled out a remote control from under the table and pressed a button. The large mirror behind our dining room suddenly transformed into a screen, a feature of our smart home that James had forgotten about. "I've been working on a little project," I announced, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "A documentary of sorts." The first image appeared, James and Sarah entering a hotel in Vermont. The timestamp clearly visible. "Interesting conference you attended last month, darling," I said to James, though I don't remember seeing intimate dinners on the medical symposium agenda. Their faces turned ashen as more images appeared, secret meetings, stolen kisses in hospital corridors, text messages I had recovered. But then came the real bombshell. Documents detailing questionable surgeries, falsified insurance claims, and evidence of kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. "It's fascinating," I continued, my voice dripping with calculated sweetness, "how a routine investigation into a marital affair can uncover so much more." James gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Sarah looked like she might faint. "But wait," I said, pressing another button. The screen showed footage from earlier that evening, Sarah arriving at our house. Notice anything strange about the wine you've been drinking, Sarah? Her hand flew to her throat, eyes widening in panic. Oh, don't worry, it's not poisoned. I'm not that cliché. But you might want to check your phone. Those lovely photos you just took of our home, planning your future decoration changes, they've already been uploaded to a cloud server, along with, well, everything else. The magnitude of what I had orchestrated began to dawn on them. This wasn't just about exposing their affair. This was about complete annihilation. You see, I continued, standing up slowly, while you two were playing house and planning your future, I was planning too. Every document, every photo, every piece of evidence has been carefully cataloged and sent to multiple secure locations. One wrong move, one attempt at retaliation, and everything goes to the medical board, the FBI, and every news outlet in the country. James finally found his voice, though it trembled. You're bluffing, he whispered, but the fear in his eyes told me he knew I wasn't. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Divorce papers, I explained, sliding them across the table. Already filed, but don't worry, I'm keeping the house and the cars and half of everything else. It's amazing what leverage one can get with the right information. Sarah suddenly stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I should go, she stammered, but I raised my hand to stop her. Oh no, dear. We're not quite finished with dinner, or our discussion. My voice remained eerily calm as I pulled out another envelope. These are your resignation papers from Mount Sinai. You'll want to sign them tonight. Her face contorted, with rage and disbelief. You can't make me resign. You have no right. I laughed softly, the sound echoing in the tense dining room. Actually, I have evidence of you accessing patient files without authorization to help James cover his tracks. That's a federal offense, Sarah. But I'm giving you a choice. Resign quietly or face the consequences. James attempted to regain control of the situation, his surgeon's ego refusing to accept defeat. Whatever you think you have, Catherine, we can work this out, he said, trying to sound reasonable. 15 years of marriage deserve better than blackmail. I turned to him slowly, letting him see the cold fury in my eyes. 15 years of marriage deserved better than betrayal, James. But here we are. I pressed another button on the remote, and new images appeared on the screen. Surveillance footage from his private office at the hospital, showing him accepting envelopes of cash from pharmaceutical representatives. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the kickbacks? The unnecessary surgeries you performed to pad your statistics? The lives you put at risk for your reputation? My voice remained steady as I watched him crumble. Sarah, did you know about this part? Did he tell you how he built his prestigious career? Or were you too busy planning how to spend my money to ask questions? Sarah's face showed genuine shock. Clearly, there were secrets James had kept from his mistress, too. I stood up and walked to the wine cabinet, pulling out a specific bottle. This Bordeaux, I said, examining the label, was supposed to be for our 20th anniversary. You mentioned it in your text to Sarah, how you'd drink it together, once I was gone. I poured myself a glass, savoring the bouquet. Instead, it's becoming the wine of my liberation. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. The perfect dinner party I had planned for years was now serving as the stage for their undoing. The weight of their choices hung heavy in the air as I continued, revealing layer after layer of their deception, and my counterplay. Every romantic weekend they had spent together had given me time to gather evidence. Every secret meeting had provided another opportunity to document their indiscretions. While they thought they were being clever, I had been methodically building an airtight case that would destroy them both professionally and personally. As I sipped the wine that should have celebrated our enduring love, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. The life we had built together was over, but from its ashes, I would rise stronger, wiser, and finally free. The crescendo of my revenge symphony was reaching its peak. I walked to the kitchen and returned with dessert, individual creme brulee, James's favorite. "It's funny," I said, placing the ramekins in front of them, "how life gives us these perfect metaphors. On the surface, everything looks pristine, crystallized, perfect. But crack that surface." I demonstrated by sharply tapping my spoon on the caramelized sugar, watching it shatter. "And everything underneath comes pouring out." "You psychotic bitch," Sarah suddenly spat, finally breaking. "You planned all of this? You've been watching us? Stalking us?" I smiled, unmoved by her outburst. "No, Sarah. I've been protecting myself, and now I'm taking back everything you tried to steal." I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. Instantly, both their phones began buzzing incessantly. Notifications of their bank accounts being frozen, credit cards canceled, professional credentials under review. The color drained from James's face as he realized the full scope of what I had set in motion. "The hospital board receives their package of evidence in—" I glanced at my watch. "About 15 minutes. A comprehensive file of every questionable surgery, every falsified record, every kickback." "Oh, and Sarah, those private photos you sent James from your work email? They're included too. Hospital policy is quite strict about that sort of thing." Sarah's hands began to shake so violently she knocked over her wine glass, the red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. James finally snapped. He stood up, looming over me with the same intimidating presence he used to dominate. His operating room. "You'll destroy everything. My career, my reputation, you'll ruin us both." I met his gaze steadily, unafraid. "No, James. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." I turned to Sarah, who was now quietly sobbing. "He never told you about the malpractice cases he buried, did he? Or how many patients he really lost? Too busy planning your future in my house, I suppose." The doorbell rang, its chime cutting through the tension like a knife. "Ah, right on. Schedule?" I said, standing up. "That would be Detective Morrison from the Medical Fraud Division. I invited him for coffee and evidence review." James lunged for his phone, but I shook my head. "Don't bother calling your lawyer. He received his own special package an hour ago. Apparently, he's quite eager to cooperate with the investigation, to save his own license." As I walked towards the door, I could feel their world collapsing behind me. The carefully constructed lies, the stolen moments, the dreams of a future built on deceit, all of it was crumbling to dust. And I, Catherine Harrison, once the perfect wife and now the architect of their downfall, felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The truth, no matter how painful, was finally out. As Detective Morrison entered our dining room, the look of professional satisfaction on his face confirmed that my months of careful planning had paid off. "Dr. Harrison," he said, his badge glinting under the chandelier light. "We have some matters to discuss." Sarah attempted to slip away, but another detective appeared in the doorway, blocking her exit. "Ms. Taylor, you'll need to stay as well. We have quite a few questions about your role in all this." I sat back, sipping my wine, watching as their world imploded in real time. James was handcuffed right there, next to the table where we had shared thousands of meals, made countless plans, and where he had ultimately sealed his fate. Sarah was escorted out separately, mascara streaking down her face as she realized her dreams of becoming the next Mrs. Harrison had transformed into potential federal charges. Before James was led away, I approached him one last time. "You know what the biggest difference is between you and me, James? You thought you were the smartest person in the room, operating on people's lives like they were chess pieces. But I learned to play chess too, and I learned to think 20 moves ahead." I reached up and straightened his tie one final time, a gesture I had performed countless times during our marriage. The house, the cars, the vacation properties, they're all mine now. The prenup is void due to your criminal activities. But don't worry about money for your defense lawyer. I hear the public defender's office is quite competent. 3 months later, I sat in my home office, reading the morning paper. James had pleaded guilty to multiple charges of medical fraud and insurance scams, facing 15 years in federal prison. Sarah had turned state's evidence against him, receiving a lighter sentence but losing her medical license permanently. The hospital had launched a full investigation, and several of James's colleagues were also facing charges. My anonymous tip to the pharmaceutical board had opened an entire investigation into medical kickbacks across the state. I poured myself a cup of coffee and walked out onto my balcony, overlooking the garden where James and I had once planned to grow old together. The divorce was finalized, my financial future secure, and my reputation intact. The wronged wife who helped expose corruption in the medical system. The media painted me as a hero, though they never knew the full extent of my careful orchestration. The doorbell rang, my real estate agent arriving to discuss listing James's beloved vacation house in the Hamptons. I had already donated his precious wine collection to a charity auction, using the proceeds to establish a fund for patients who had been victims of medical fraud. As I walked through my house, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I saw not a victim, but a victor. The woman who had turned betrayal into justice, pain into power. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I had learned it's even better served with irrefutable evidence, strategic timing, and a side of justice. As I opened the door to greet my real estate agent, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the perfect revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. It's about rebuilding yourself stronger from the ashes of their betrayal. At 42, I was starting a new chapter. My career was thriving. I had exposed a major medical fraud. And I was finally free from a marriage that had become a prison of lies. As I looked to the future, I realized that the best revenge wasn't just about the downfall of James and Sarah. It was about my own rise, stronger and more determined.